Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone. Welcome to the 75th edition of the Rider Rumblings video podcast. We always pick a corresponding Rider uniform number to go with the number of the podcast. So, number 75, once upon a time, Bill Manchuk, and currently Regina Thunder perennial PFC All-Star Logan Furland, who's on the Riders practice roster once again this year. Murray McCormick is with us as always, and we are very pleased and delighted to have with us today the Rough Riders president and CEO, Craig Reynolds. Thank you so much, Craig.
I'm happy to be here as well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Anything new?
Yeah, it's a little busy, I would say.
What do you make of this season, Craig? I mean, going into it, I'll be the first to admit, even though I did pick the team for second, I didn't think there would be anything like this unfolding. Is it? Does it qualify as a surprise for you, or what's your general take on it?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a surprise. I probably wouldn't call it a surprise. I think some aspects of the season have been surprising, and I think no one would have predicted some of the results of the season. But I think at the beginning of the year, we knew we had a good football team, right? So we knew we had a good football team last year. We were 12-6. Lots of change though, and there's always change. But we knew we had a good football team. Did I think we'd be 13-5 and hosting the West Final? I'm not so sure. But we set the goal every year of hosting a home playoff game, and as the season went on, obviously, a lot of things went our way. Full credit to the coaching staff. Those guys work tremendously hard. Very, very proud of the work that they do, and then full credit to Jeremy. Right, lots of moves in the offseason that really paid dividends, and obviously we'll probably talk about him, but finding Cody Fajardo was amongst that. So really, really proud of the entire organization, proud of the team, proud of the football ops, proud of the coaching staff, and of course the team themselves.
I have to ask, what did you think when you saw Zach Collaros go down the third play into the season?
Yeah, it's one of those moments you'll never forget where you were, right? So I was actually in Hamilton. I wanted to go on that particular road trip just because it was Craig and Jeremy's first game, so I kind of wanted to be there. And I was with Jeremy, and so of course at first you're angry, right? Because of the hit, and then once you calm down a little bit, you're really, really curious about what you have behind Zach. And I remember, and again, not many people know this, but I remember in the off season talking to Jeremy around when he, obviously lots of conversation around backup quarterback. And I remember talking to Jeremy about that position, and he indicated he was going to go hard after Cody Fajardo. And then he said, and I'll never forget it, he said, I really think he could be a starter in this league. And so that gave me confidence, obviously. But it's funny, it's a bit of a funny story, because I sort of said that I after the injury, after we sort of calmed down, I said, so Cody, you're pretty confident Cody being a starter in this league? And he said, well, we're about to find out. And so it's kind of funny, obviously. You'd never want that to happen to anybody. Certainly, we think the world of Zach, and that was a very, very unfortunate incident. But again, I went back to my initial thoughts were, Jeremy had confidence in Cody, and let's see what we have here.
Did you ever imagine anything like this, though? Not only the way he's performed, but the kind of presence he's become not only in the team, but I think across Rider Nation.
Yeah, again, I think you'd be lying if you said you predicted it, right? So again, I had confidence with Jeremy and the things he said and why he believed he could be a capable starter, and just getting to know the team and hearing about him sort of in training camp, you understand the type of person he is, but I don't think anybody could have predicted what we've seen. He's just an incredibly quality human being, and we see it day in, day out. He resonates so well in this market, and that's for good reason, because he's just the way he is, his humility, his honesty, just the way he approaches. He's hardworking. He's extremely tough. So every quality you could imagine that is going to resonate here in Saskatchewan, he has, and he's just and on top of that, he's played so well, set so many first year records, and he's been a joy to watch.
Do you think he's going to play on the 17th? How about we ask put you on the spot,
Reynolds?
Reynolds?
Unfortunately, I'm not a doctor, so I can only go on what Cody himself has said, and I think he's gone on record saying he's going to do everything he possibly can to play in that game. But I'll tell you, getting that bye was really important, and I was a bundle of nerves on Saturday as a result of knowing that we really needed that bye to give Cody that extra rest, and the team knew that as well. And I think you saw on Saturday they ultimately came through with that.
Because I did a story a while back on what game day is like for players and coaches and stuff. I wonder what it's like for you, because you mentioned the other day in Edmonton, you're a bundle of nerves, you eat, you're kind of like, what's it like? You kind of think, as the president, maybe the haze in the barn and maybe you can relax, but you sound like, I don't know if you could possibly do that, but what it's like for you on game day.
Yeah, it's stressful. And I think the season goes on as the games, every game's important, so I shouldn't even say this, but as the season go on and you start to sort of understand what's required to control your own fate or where you're going to position yourself, I think the stress level increases. And a lot of it is control. It's not, I'm by no means a control freak, but it's really outside of your control. It's something completely outside of your control, and you're just watching. So yeah, I actually had a very, very busy day Saturday, and I actually have reflected on that. And I'm like, that's really good, because you don't have time to necessarily think about it and dwell on it. I know on the road, Murray, when I saw you, like that's you have a fair bit more time on the road, and so yeah, I do tend to eat too much, and sort of you do those types of things, and I'll tell you, my step counter gets a lot of steps because you're pacing a lot, I find. But yeah, your bundle of nerves. I was really, really nervous for that Edmonton game. I was really confident that should we come back to Saskatchewan in front of our home crowd on Saturday, that we were going to have a good chance of winning that game. So that game in Edmonton, I was really nervous, and we needed to win that game. And the night before, we had watched Winnipeg do us a bit of a favor and beat Calgary. So you knew we now recontrolled, if that's even a word, our destiny, and so should we win out back to back versus Edmonton, we'd get first place.
Sorry, man.
Do you look up in the stands after that game and you see the people partying? It was almost similar to 13 party. A little. It was a little fuller stadium, the older stuff, but it looked like the same sort of celebration for fans that have been waiting so long, 10 years to see this first place.
Absolutely. Like, the atmosphere was electric. Like, I'll never forget that "Let's Go Riders" chant that sort of broke out spontaneous. And those moments in sports are what makes sports so fantastic. The spontaneous sort of fan moments. We do a lot on game day to try to generate something, but when you get our fans chanting like that, and it was so loud. I was in a booth, and you can't hear the announcements. You can't, but we could hear that, and it was just the whole stadium felt like it was vibrating. And you're right. Like, unfortunately, finishing first in these parts doesn't happen as often as it probably should. And I know even since I was born, this is only the third time since I was born that it's happened. So I think you feel that from the fan base, and it was really cool to watch them. And then we had a bunch of our fans on the field afterwards, and our players sort of came out in waves and were engaging with them, and just the roar every time a player came out, and you could just tell they wanted to celebrate, and I think we all felt that.
How do you balance that against the fact that there were 29,000 people and change, and at least I would have thought in a game of such magnitude, 33,350 would have been automatic.
Yeah, and I think we spent a ton of time. I can't tell you how much time we spend looking at this, and it's not just us. I know the league spends a ton of time as well. And then thinking even broader, it's an industry-wide. I hate to sort of call it a trend, but I will, for lack of a better word. It's an industry-wide trend, and you see it in sports, but you also see it in entertainment. And I can tell you what we do know is, and if I had the answer, I'd have this incredible consulting business, because you'd be out sort of working with sports and entertainment organizations around this. So I don't, and we don't have all the answers, but I can tell you what I do know is that it's not just one thing. So is weather a factor? Yeah, weather is definitely a factor. Was it the only factor Saturday? No, absolutely not, right? But why do I know it's a factor? Because when we get the schedule out, we track daily sales of tickets, and that game just was not selling. The game against Montreal, which historically is a poor draw, was selling at a great rate, and that game against Edmonton, which is a traditional rival, which even when you look at the schedule could be a very, very meaningful game, wasn't selling. And so I think, obviously people look at November 2nd and they think about that, and they're like, well, maybe not, right? So obviously don't need to talk about it too much, but the economy, just being a little softer in Saskatchewan. we are, at the end of the day, as much as we like to think that we're a required spend, it's a discretionary spend at the end of the day. I had lunch yesterday with somebody who's in sort of the discretionary spend business as well, and they talked about how their business is down a fair bit because people are just choosing how and when to spend their dollars. So there's a bit of that. There's increased competition that we've sort of seen over the number of years that continues to grow, with the number of events, the number of activities, the number of options for your discretionary spend, and then I also think time is a factor nowadays. Time is the most valuable resource I think people have, and they're stretched with their time. And so Saturday at 2:00 is a busy time, and obviously we wanted Saturday at 2:00 because it helps with the weather challenge, but it's also sort of hampers you on another side. So we have incredible fans. I'll tell you, even though it was 29,000, it sounded like 33,000 in there, and they make such a difference. And so we're pushing really hard for the playoff game to sell that out, and it's tickets are moving very, very fast. So we're excited about that.
As you look at it, Craig, might this lead to a review of pricing?
Yeah, and that's already happened. So, and sorry, that was the other factor that I failed to mention. So thanks for that, Rob. Is pricing, of course, is pricing the only issue? No, but is pricing potentially an issue, especially in an economy like this? Yeah, absolutely. So we've actually announced our 2020 ticket pricing, and we've held ticket prices across the board, and we've actually reduced prices in 10% of the stadium. So that's over 3,000 seats that will have pricing in 2020 less than 2019. And we've moved forward with a family pricing concept. So family of 4 can get in for under $100 now. So, and that's a direct result of the work we do from a data collection perspective to try to, survey fans and talk to fans and understand what some of the challenges are. And it's amazing the level of data you're able to gather in this industry nowadays about which sections potentially are overpriced, which sections are underpriced. But obviously we don't necessarily act on that. But we did act on some good data we had, and obviously some feedback that we collect after every single game. And so we've reduced ticket prices in 10% of the stadium.
If I may ask one more question on that topic, 2007, suddenly the lifting of the blackout became automatic. Now it's just assumed the blackout is going to be lifted. Has any consideration been given to that policy in light of the fact, you still had 92% capacity this season, down about 12,000 bodies from the year before. It was 98 and change the first year in the new stadium. So above 90 is still tremendous, but that's still a difference of about 12 grand. Is the blackout or lack thereof perhaps an issue?
No, I don't think so. I actually don't know if it's an issue, but I will tell you that it's certainly not something we'd want to revisit, because I think getting your product on television, getting your product exposed is important. And I think people see the atmosphere there, and it helps to, sell tickets down the road. I think people that watched that on television and saw, as you mentioned earlier, Murray, people celebrating and the atmosphere and the energy, it shows really well on television, and hopefully they want to be there for the playoff game. And there's, like I said before, there could be lots of reasons why they didn't join us last Saturday, and hopefully they're there on the 17th. So no, we wouldn't want to revisit that. And the other thing, as we look at this attendance, it's not a this year sort of trend, and we look to last time we hosted a playoff game in the old stadium in 2013, didn't sell out. We had all that extra capacity. I think we just barely had over 30,000. So weather's a factor. There's lots of factors always that lead into it, but no, I don't think the blackout's something we want to revisit for sure.
Well, I just wonder, blackouts are kind of hard to do now with streaming available and everything. Like you can, when I was people can watch it on their phones. I wonder how you control all of the other aspects of the way your game's being presented now, and it's.
Yeah, and you want that exposure, right?
Yeah.
You want the exposure to a new generation who a lot of folks will consume it on phones, etc. Right? So or stream the games, and so you want to make sure that the next generation of fans are getting exposed to your product for sure.
Remember Jim Hobson mentioning one time that you really want a home playoff game, because if you get to the Grey Cup, it costs money.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess
So
that's to have. I kind of wonder: is it better to have a final? Obviously, the final is the bye is good. Is it better to have any playoff game regardless, or does the West Final give even more chance to maybe offset, because the Grey Cup is a $500,000 expense in that area. I'm guessing. I don't know how much it
depends if you win or you lose. Yeah. But it's funny. We talk about this the league a fair bit. It's kind of a bit goofy, if you want to sort of say that, use that word, because the further you go, the more expensive it becomes, right? So the Grey Cup, and I think it's something that's it's on the agenda to talk about moving forward, especially with a change in the Grey Cup model. So we will sort of talk about that. But yeah, and it's hard to answer the question on what's more profitable. The difference you have when you host the West Finals, you have another week of compensation for the players and coaches, and which is what you want, right? Obviously, you want that. But it for me, it goes way beyond financial. You want that West Final because you want that rest, and you want one game in front of your home fans with the opportunity to go to the Grey Cup. And I think the difference our fans make in the stadium here, it's valuable across the league, but I would say in Saskatchewan, it's extremely, extremely valuable.
You look at the way this team has trended, and I remember you said, around 2015, the goal was sustained success. The team's record has improved every year since then. Now, first place. Obviously, the ultimate goal has not yet been attained, but compared to what the blueprint that you had established, how is the team faring?
I think well, right? I think that was one of the things when you looked even historically at the history of the team, but I guess where we were at in 2015, and that was the goal, is to consistently, and I think I think we talked about it this way, is consistently compete for first and second, and I think you've seen that certainly over the last 2 years. We were in that conversation, I would say, even 3 years ago, and obviously went east and had a good run there. But that's the goal, is to be consistently competing for first and second. As we know, this is such a tough league, and the West is so tough. So the reality is, a lot of things have to go right. We talked about it off the top, right? A lot of things have to go right, and a lot of things went right for us this year, and so we finished in first place. But we were in that conversation throughout. Once we got through a bit of a slow start throughout the rest of the year, and that's the goal, is to be competing for first and second, because it gives you that much a better opportunity to reach your ultimate goal, which as you mentioned, we haven't met yet, but we position ourselves the best we possibly can in 2019 to do that.
Are you worried about the league a little bit, with the top six are so dominant and the bottom three teams are so mediocre be a strength? Ottawa, Toronto, and even BC were so weak given the schedule in the top six. Like, the season, the playoffs are almost determined with 2 or 3 weeks left to go in this season. I don't know if that concern you when you look at that? Or?
No, I think no, because I think we've seen, and the reality of this league is turnarounds can happen quite quickly. And so, this year was a little bit of an anomaly, where down the stretch there were not every game had an impact, and but the schedule was made such that West played West and East played East, so there was the opportunity to have these games be very, very meaningful. It's just the way the season shook out. So no, I think obviously you spend a lot of time thinking about the league, and obviously some of the attendance trends we talked about are things that we're focused on, but I don't think the competitiveness or lack thereof in 1 year you can read too much into, because like we talked about before, you can turn around in this league fairly quickly.
I know you can't solve this, but the injuries to quarterbacks, and I wonder if that's going to be a discussion at the league level, to have every team only one lose a starter and at their quarterbacks. And I know they're addressing some of the hits, the one, like you can go back to the one that Zach Kolaris, was that enough of a penalty? I don't know. I don't think it was enough. I think he should have been ejected, but that's okay. Are you going to think when we discuss injuries to this prime position, or?
Yeah, player safety is discussed every single year, and we have a really productive, really good set of meetings in January this year. It's going to be in Ontario, where we get our coaches, our GMs, and our presidents, and obviously the league there, and we talk about a number of topics, but player safety is always front and center. So I'm sure it's going to be discussed as well. And again, some of these things are unfortunately cyclical, or maybe cyclical is not the right word, but they happen from time to time. And I remember, I think it was 2014, where there's a rash of quarterback injuries, and we saw the exact same thing this year, and yet you'll have years where the quarterbacks generally remain healthy. So absolutely, player safety will be talked about every year. it's talked about generally, but you talk about obviously the quarterback position and protecting quarterbacks, and it'll come up again for sure.
What does it say about your team that you've done this while starting 3 different quarterbacks? That's the first of 8 first place finishes since 1951. This is the only time there have been 3 different starters, and in games, in the first game of the year, Isaac Harker wins one out of the bullpen, so to speak. To have done that, considering that adversity, what does that say about the team?
Yeah, and I think it just talks about the quality of the team, and I think I'll go back to Craig's sort of mantra this year has been team above self, right? And so I know even when Cody went down, the team rallied around winning that game Saturday to give Cody that rest. So I think it's a very deep football team, and I think Jeremy structured it like that, and it's a very good football team top to bottom, and I think you see good football teams are often able to overcome, and we're not the only example in the league by any means, but good football teams are able to still win games even when they lose a part here or there. Obviously quarterback, as we know in the CFL, is very, very important, but you see examples of good football teams this year that have overcome some either short-term or long-term quarterback injuries and still won games, still are in the playoffs, those types of things.
There was quite the reaction to the changes to Gainer the Gopher. Maybe we can have some fun a little bit.
Yeah.
But were you surprised by that to the eyes and that stuff? Like, here's a Gopher that's been around, and then you trot him out. And I think you guys handled it well. But were you surprised by the reaction to Gainer? Did you guys even think it would happen that way with the...
Yes and no. Gainer, he goes overboard sometimes, and he threw those green contact lenses on, and it was probably a little bit too much green for Gainer. But no, nothing surprises me honestly in Rider Nation. It's so fun to be a part of, and I just wake up every day, and I'm so lucky to have this role and be a part of it, because fans are so passionate about absolutely everything. And the response there around a change to Gainer, who's fantastic and such a good symbol for the Riders, just got people talking, and it was something to watch. It really was, and I know we spent a ton of time sort of talking about how are we going to resolve this, because obviously the fans sort of expressed their frustration, and they weren't happy with certain aspects of it, and so we went back. And so did we expect that level of reaction? No, I'd be lying if I said we did, but we probably should have, just because of the passion of Rider Nation and somebody as character as beloved as Gainer when he went through that dramatic of a change.
What do you think? This is looking through 2020. What does this season have an impact on next year with the Grey Cup being here? Do you notice? I don't know how you gauge what it would do. Maybe you're a little more aware of Lion. Does it have an impact on 2020 this season?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does from an excitement perspective, for sure. And, some of the ways we gauge that is season ticket renewal rates and those types of things, which I will say are certainly trending really, really positively and ahead of the pace we would have seen last year. So I think there's excitement. I think getting our franchise quarterback locked up for the next 2 years helped that. And I think the fan base is excited about this particular team and what we've been able to accomplish this year. And again, we got the playoffs here, so season not over. But yeah, I think there's a buzz and there's excitement, and I think you marry that with the Grey Cup that's coming here, and that's always, as we know, Saskatchewan delivers incredibly on events, and in particular Grey Cups. And so I think there's a buzz and there's an excitement, and I think that's great for the province.
What is it? Maybe I don't know. What do you expect in Calgary? I know the Grey Cup Festival is all going to be on the Stampede grounds, basically.
Similar
to yours, but the stadiums.
The stadium's off-site, but
off-site. But
I'll tell you, we went there and we visited them with them. Late August, I think it was. Yeah, late August. So we took our sort of Grey Cup planning committee, myself and co-chair Randy Beatty was part of that, but our volunteer chair Darren Anaka, our Grey Cup executive director Mike Edwards, all joined us, and we went through their plans to see what we could learn and could build off. And I was really, really impressed. And I think Randy's vision Randy Ambrosie's vision on growing Grey Cups is really sort of playing out. And I think what we saw was Edmonton raising the bar in 2018, and I think you're going to see Calgary raise it again in 2019, which puts the pressure on us to raise it even further in 2020, and we're certainly prepared for that. But even the sharing is great. Like there were so many things we learned that they're doing, and so we've either started planning to build off of that, or we're going to just go and observe and sort of say, if this plays out the way we think it will be, let's incorporate this into our Grey Cup. So I'm very, very impressed with their plans. I think it's going to be a great festival in Calgary, and like I said, I think they've built on what Edmonton's sort of when they raised the bar last year.
I think the bar is going to, the fact it's all going to be in one at all at Everest Place is going to be such a, I don't know what's going to do to the out, if you're going to maybe miss the feeling of the rest of the city, but I think being incorporated all into that area is going to be very interesting and cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fantastic. And I'll tell you, when we went there and we went on the pitch for the bid, it really resonated with the CFL, and just the fact that for the first time ever, absolutely everything's going to be on the same site. And we're going to work to make sure the entire city feels and is welcomed into the Grey Cup experience. So we're working with the various groups to make sure that happens. But just the ability to wake up in the morning and know, hey, I'm going to go to the Everest Place site and I'll be able to take in a number of these events, and then there's the stadium where the game's going to be played in the background. I think it's just tremendous, and I'm curious to see in Calgary how that plays out, because it's a reasonably similar model other than the stadium. But yeah, I think, like I said, that was one of the key drivers of us winning that bid.
January, you signed Chris Jones to a contract extension. Very shortly thereafter, he's off to Cleveland. Not an ideal situation. Jeremy O'Day is hired. Craig Dickinson is hired. That could be a really disruptive thing under different circumstances. How pleased are you that things have turned out as they did, considering that you lost such an important figure right at the start of the new year?
Yeah, well, obviously very, very pleased. But I think what is important is to remember is sort of the succession planning, and I give Chris a lot of credit for that. Even when he was first hired, he talked a lot about succession, and he talked about building the organization on the football side to be able to withstand change in personnel, both on the team perspective, but in football ops and coaching. So I think obviously having somebody, a general manager in waiting, if you will, in Jeremy was something that really was beneficial, and I think the world of Jeremy. It was very, very clear he's ready to be a general manager, and I think knowing that we had Craig Dickinson on staff as well, and what an incredible coach he is. Sort of, there was a sense of calm, I would say, just because we knew we had the type of people in house and the type of quality people in house that we knew we could turn to, and we knew we're ready for the roles and would in fact excel in the role. So actually, despite sort of the noise around it, personally, I had a ton of confidence as we sort of as those plans unfolded, and we were able to announce Jeremy, and then Jeremy went through a process and ultimately landed on Craig. And so coming out of that, I felt a fair bit of confidence in terms of where we were gonna go.
How about putting you on the spot here? Calgary or Winnipeg this weekend, do you cheer for either team? Does it make a difference?
No, I don't. It's funny. I was actually texting with a friend earlier today, and they asked that same question, and I said, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I think we've had some success against both teams. Calgary, unfortunately, we lost both those games to them this year, but last year we had a ton of success there, and we've, we're able to win that extra game against Winnipeg at home, and both are really, really good football teams. And the way I would say it, Murray, is that I've told several people this. I said why Saturday was so important to clinch first is you want to play Calgary or Winnipeg. You don't want to play both.
Yeah, that's true.
Would one of them drive ticket sales more than the other? Winnipeg's a little closer. But both of them, I think you can refer to them as a rivalry game and not be inaccurate.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think with Winnipeg, you have the opportunity for some folks there will make the trek, and I think sort of that's been proven over Labor Day, and obviously the other game we hosted against them here. So you will get some travel. They're both traditional rivals, but I will tell you that Calgary historically over the last few years has been our best-selling game generally because of Calgary and some of the rivalries there. So I think either way you're going to be good. It's going to drive a lot of interest in terms of number of opposing team fans in the stadium. I think if you have Winnipeg, you're probably going to have more fans there.
And who knows, this being the CFL and as unpredictable as it could be, what if it's Zach Collaros starting against the Rough Riders?
Yeah, it's what a story that is.
You never know.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned it earlier. Like, we think the world of Zach, and so unfortunate at the beginning of the season. And I'll tell you, like, obviously cheering for Zach on so many levels that game against Calgary at home, cheering for him certainly on the personal level, and then it was sort of ironic that we really needed a big game from Zach Collaros to get ultimately get first place, and he delivered. And so a neat storyline if that's the case, for sure.
There's no shortage of them, no matter how it lands. This is I mean, you mentioned there's only been 3 in your lifetime. There would only be 2 that you would remember. I'm really old, so I remember all 3 of them. What stands out when you look at your recollections of Western Finals in Regina, or perhaps in the singular?
Yeah, well, it is a singular, because the other one was 76, and I was 1 year's a 1-year-old child in Foam Lake, Saskatchewan.
That age stuff interfere with his memories. He remembers
so
stuff.
I don't have much memory in Foam Lake,
12.
Saskatchewan. I was
there.
1, but I'll never forget 09, and it was my first year with the club, so I just joined as club CFO earlier that year. And so it was, and again, it was the first time in my lifetime, and I'll never forget the crowd, the energy in that place when we knew we were going to win and you're going to the Grey Cup. I'll never forget the celebration just with fellow staff, fellow team members, is just embracing. I remember embracing Steve Mazurek on the sidelines, and just sort of that we did it, and we did it sense, and we're going to the Grey Cup, and you haven't reached the ultimate goal, but that's a major milestone, is to go to the Grey Cup, and to do it in front of your home fans, and that's the difference between the West Semi, obviously, and the West Final. Like the West Semi, it's like, great, we've won this game and it's fantastic, but you still have one more game. There, you're going to the Grey Cup, and you have a chance to win a championship, and so that's really, really special.
I remember, after that game, I was going to try and get back to the office to write. Got to the car, and I realized pretty quickly, nobody really wants to leave here.
Yeah.
So I sat in the passenger seat of my car, popped open my laptop, and started writing as people kept running by the car and banging on the hood. And so it was forever until you could get out of there. And it was one of the coolest things I've ever. I remember 1976, November 21st, 76, after the Riders beat Edmonton 23-13, coincidentally. And Mom and I just sat in her old car forever. And we wanted to leave, but we didn't want to leave. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's almost a contradiction. And just nobody's in any hurry to get out of there when these things happen, because they're generational, live that.
They are, and that's what makes sports so fantastic, is these moments that you'll never forget. You always never forget where you were when this happened or when that happened. And I think that's what makes sports really special. And you have lots of those. And it's one of those things, like I mentioned, that sort of embrace with Steve Mazurek on the sidelines. I'll never forget that. That was just a special moment in my first year with the club. The fan reactions, those are the things I'll remember as well. And I'll never forget that "Let's Go Rider" chant when we clinched first. And hopefully there's a moment on the 17th I'll never forget. But I'll never forget, just looking up in the stands and just hearing the roar and feeling the energy. And that, and obviously the 2013 at home. The energy, it's almost indescribable, like the energy in a stadium when that happens.
I know Brendan Tammy mentioned in his column today, you have to start planning to go to the Grey Cup already, don't you? You don't just Sunday night says, we're going to Calgary. So you're probably working already now, just setting flight. Well, you don't have to work flights as many. But
you start working once you make the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Because you start working the various scenarios. And so, I'll give her a plug. Kelsey Rosenkrantz, who's my executive assistant, she literally will be the busiest human being in Saskatchewan come November 18th, should we be successful, or actually the night of the 17th. But there's a ton of planning that goes into it. And I think, and Jim Hobson always tells this story, but in 2007, they weren't really, because it had been so long since they went to the Grey Cup, they really didn't have a plan. By 2009, we had a bit of a plan. By 2010, we had a bit of a plan. You revisit all the time. But I even know in 2017, obviously when we were in the East Final, we had it a completely laid out plan should you win that game. And so, but it's funny that's what probably isn't appreciated is having a West final at home is also good for that, because I know Kelsey will be in her office, hitting go on the plan. Should we win that game at home, and it allows us to all be sort of in our offices and start dealing with what you need to deal with, because it's a crazy week.
Because I think we'd have to mention it's easier to cancel than it is to book.
Yeah, and you line so many things up. You have hotels on contingency,
and players' tickets,
everything. You have everything ready to go, and you literally it's kind of I said it today in a meeting. You sort of literally hit go on the plan, and that's sending this email versus that email, and because it is easier to sort of say no, unfortunately we're not going to do that. But there's it's shocking the number of logistics that you have to deal with, because you're dealing with an entire organization, and then you're dealing with an entire team. And obviously our first goal is to make sure the team's taken care of, right? Make sure that the players can get their families there, the players' tickets are taken care of, and we do that very, very quickly so that they can focus in on the game. So by Tuesday, that's all locked and loaded. Like, they don't have to worry about anything. We hand them a sheet after the game which says, please tick these boxes, please give us these names, and then the team goes to work.
Well, I know you've been very generous with your time, Craig. I'll give you the floor. Is there anything you'd like to say to wrap up, aside from please let me leave?
No, I would never say that. This is time, like you said. I can't believe time's up already. No, it would just be to Rider Nation. We need you on Sunday, and we say it all the time, but it can't be understated. Like, our fans absolutely make a difference. Like, they do. And I know, talking to Jeremy and Craig, they're very keen to make sure we have a packed house on Sunday, because it makes a massive difference. It's imposing for the visiting team. It makes a difference to our guys. It's amazing the little intricacies of the games in terms of how they can time up on defense, pass rushes, those types of things, based on having a packed house and a full house and a loud crowd. So so it'd just be see you on the 17th, hopefully, and be loud.
Awesome.
Rob,
thanks so much, Craig.
How about I want to throw this at you, Rob? Who's going to win this weekend?
Calgary's going to win.
Calgary's going to win. How about out east?
I think Montreal will win.
Okay,
I have no faith in the Eskimos whatsoever.
I'm going Calgary too. I have no faith in the Eskimos in the least. I think even with Trevor Harris, they aren't. So, and then we'll talk about the next one later.
One formality to get rid of, and then I begin the shameless hucksterism. Austin Davis with an interjection. Austin Davis has a question from the studio. Our studio audience has a question.
Craig, last year was the first playoff game in the new stadium.
Yeah.
Was a rare home playoff loss. Are you superstitious at all? Concerned about the West Final?
I'm personally not, but I will tell you, there are lots of people in sports organizations who are. It's been interesting to watch when people look at things like jersey combinations and the amount of work that they do around. Well, we wore this jersey during this playoff game and this Grey Cup game, so it's interesting to kind of walk through that. I'm not superstitious at all. I think that stadium gives us a huge competitive advantage, and I think last year we had obviously some injuries that we didn't anticipate. So no, not superstitious.
Thanks.
Murray with our first of our two bits of protocol.
Do you want to promote? Let's do the book
please
first.
buy my book.
Rob, have you written a book lately?
I've written a book lately. It's my third. 100 Things Rough Riders fans should know and do before they die. Is this where it goes? I'm not good at this. Craig Reynolds was generous enough to help me with some of the chapters in here. He's liberally quoted, so thanks, Craig.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I think Murray McCormick's name is in there once. So there. Thanks, Murray, for your minimal assistance.
It's kind of the way I'm treated around here.
This is available at all fine bookstores or garage sales.
I'm going to stop promoting your book because of that. I thought I was getting my name out there.
That was a good one. I'm so proud of that one.
Jeez, that's 103,
all
13
the sports
things.
writers that have ever lived that aren't in here at all. You're in here. So
Once.
So
I keep asking because we have
on the second printing, we'll remove
name a highlight from that book then. So I'll give you some shameless huckerism or promotion here. What's a highlight of that book when you look at it now that you've been selling it all over?
Oh, well, I was so happy to write this was kind of a cool chapter, Dauberville, chapter 12 on Glenn Dobbs. And there's so many reminders. Obviously, I wasn't alive in 1951, although I feel like it today. There's so many reminders when I read the stories about Glenn Dobbs and hear them about what that was like compared to what it's like now with Cody Fajardo. I think this is a new This is Glenn Dobbs part 2. The way he relates to the fans, just the overall presence and the overall aura. I think if we do a reprinting of this thing, and I hope we do, there will be a Cody Fajardo chapter in there. In fact, there might be a Cody Fajardo book before he's done.
You're going to have 200 things.
I know.
That's the sequel, right? 200.
Exactly.
I hopefully I get a chance to expand it. Almost got to 300 pages, 299 pages. So
Have you done all 100?
fine.
Have you done all 100 things?
I haven't. One of the chapters in there is go to a Rider game in a outside of Regina. And there's still some places on the bucket list. You obviously, Murr, in your capacity, and you and yours have been to every stadium in the league. I have not yet seen the Riders play in Montreal. That's on the list. I have not seen them play in the new stadium in Hamilton, and I've seen games in BC, but I haven't seen the Riders play there. So I'm hoping to, and I haven't seen them play in the new stadium in Winnipeg yet. So hoping to complete that circle.
Question for Murray. What's your favorite away stadium to watch a game, atmosphere-wise?
Finally, we have a good question.
Good
Thanks, Greg.
question. Yeah, that's a good
I'm curious.
one.
Please
I'm always
stick
curious.
around.
I'm always curious.
Man, that's a tough one. I really like BC Place.
Yeah.
I
Just
like
the quality of facility or
Quality
what?
of facility. I like
Yeah.
the seating we get for the press box. We're right on the 55-yard line. I know it's the smallest opening for a roof, but it's the atmosphere doesn't compare to Winnipeg when things get really rowdy. Because the outdoor press box, I know I'm not. It really creates a whole other atmosphere there, other than the Riders. But BC is such a cool place, I think. And I'm going to throw in Montreal. When I look out in that press box and I see old Montreal to this part, new Montreal to this part, this old stadium in front of you, and when it gets rocking, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then when you set foot in new Montreal, suddenly it's old Montreal.
Once.
This is Malign Marie Day. I love
I know,
this.
sure it is. Okay, anyway.
Craig, Murray, please read that.
If
Craig,
pot-
thanks again so much for your
Thanks for
time.
having me, guys.
I
This
know,
has been great.
I know they enjoyed Craig's part of the podcast, but I'm going to say, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review and a 5-star rating. It helps us grow the podcast. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to send us a question, you can email Rob at rvanstone@postmedia.com and we'll read it on the show. You can follow Rob on Twitter at rvanstone or me at MurrayLP.
Awesome. For Murray McCormick, thanks again to Craig Reynolds. I believe my name is Rob Vanstone, and we'll do this again next week with number 76 for Lyle Wozniacki.
That's a good one.
Take care. We'll talk to you next week.